Hello everybody, my name is Derek and today is the 16th of February 2010, and in this video I want to discuss the inflationary-deflationary trade in association with the increase of the money supply. If we look at the longer term time frame, especially over the last century or so, and see how inflation has evolved over the last century and how the money supply has, we can see a common thread that we have had a hyper increase in prices, or that of hyperinflation. When the prices go up 1,000, 2,000, 4,000, 5,000% over a century, that seems to be hyperinflation to me. And when a dollar loses well over 95% of its value in less than a century, then that's a hyper devaluation of the currency. Now, as far as the last few years are concerned, do we have inflation? Now, if you define inflation as far as any kind of price increase whatsoever, then yeah, I think we have had some inflation. Definitely not to the extent to which we had it in previous decades and previous years. Nonetheless, it is still here today. And I think one of the big reasons why we have not been able to have this increase in prices is because it would be suicidal for many businesses to have this hyperinflation come into play. They would go out of business if they sold their products for double or triple than what they are today, especially when you throw the competition factor into play. If one gas station decides, you know what, I'm going to have double the prices than my competition, you really think that gas station is going to survive? So because of the fact that people don't have the money that they used to, and they're not getting the loans that they used to, I think that's one big reason why prices have not went up as high as previous decades. And I was thinking of this because the year was 1991. I was a junior in high school, or as Canadians say it, grade 11. And the local pizza shop nearby, which is called Pizza Pizza, sold their slices for $1.99 at that point. It's been about 2 decades, 19 years since then, and prices today are just a little over $2.50 a slice. I think $2.69 or $2.89. Somewhere within that number, which means prices have went up less than 50% in 2 decades. That does not sound like a hyperinflationary trade. So what I did is I took 8 different products and I looked at their increase throughout the years, and what I noticed is that pretty much none of them have increased that much over the last 2 decades. We will start with a magazine, Sports Illustrated. A cover price for Sports Illustrated since 1991, or the last 19 years, has went up about 67% during that time frame. Now, the 19 years earlier, from 1972 to 1991, it was up 400%. So during that 20-year period, the price of the magazine was 5 times higher in 91 than it was in 72, where today it's less than double from what it was in 1991. The prices we pay at the pumps pretty much doubled from what it is back in 1991, but from 72 to 91 it went up 200%, or triple. The price of a house since 1991 is up 67%, and the increase from 72 to 91 was 350%. Milk is one of the ones that stayed constant, as it is up 55% since 91, and from 72 to 91 it went up only 60%. Stamps since 1991 for the U.S. Postal Service, up 50% since 91. From 72 to 91, up over 250%. To go to college or university at the University of Virginia for an in-state student, The increase since 1991 is at 188%. And from the 19 years before that, it was up 460%. The prices within the education system are going up way too high. I was watching the television today and CNBC was talking about how copper is moving into a bubble because of its excessive prices that it has. And I'm not going to debate whether or not copper's in a bubble or not, but it really seems pretty clear that the education system is nearing a massive, huge bubble within the next 12 to 18 months. Moving on, Oreo cookies are up 60% since 91. The previous 19 years before that, they went up 350%. A Hershey's chocolate bar is up double since 91. Before that, it was up 400% from that time. The minimum wage that we make is up 70% since 91. And from 72 to 91, it went up 180%. So we're also getting paid a heck of a lot less. And one of the things that I mentioned in previous videos was that of $15 minimum wage. And if I was to say that we should have $15 minimum wages, then looking at a lot of these other charts, pretty much every other product would be having a substantial increase also. Now, as far as the money supply is concerned, well, over the last 2 decades or so, it has went up about 5 times its value, or 400% extra, where the 2 decades before that, or the time frame of 72 to 91, up only 265%. So during the period of the 70s and the 80s, prices rose a heck of a lot sharper than they have in the last 2 decades, but the creation of the money supply has got more out of hand over this period of time frame now. Now, as far as consumerism is concerned, what I have been doing is just taking a look at the entire supply and demand for everything collectively. And one of the common things is that the supply has magnificently increased. And what I mean by this is that we pay more taxes than we've ever had before. So the supply of stuff we have to pay increases. More types of fees that we have ever had before in the past. A heck of a lot more different products, and technology is a major reason for that. So there's a heck of a lot more stuff that we have to buy. Back in the 1930s, 40s, 50s, and 60s and whatnot, you really didn't have to buy that much stuff. So therefore, by having higher prices means it was a lot easier for people to buy their eggs or their milk at higher prices. They didn't have to pay as much in taxes. They didn't have millions, or at least they didn't have hundreds of miscellaneous different fees. Instead, they had about 6 or 7 different fees. This is what seems to be going on right now. And it just seems as if from the mainstream media that we are required, and definitely at least recommended, to be buying more and more stuff, especially the stuff that we do not need. Now, if we are moving away from a materialistic world, a materialistic society, and that of course is up for debate, but if we are moving away from this type of world, then the supply is already very high, but the demand would thus diminish, and that type of factor would bring a massive explosion for that of deflation, because less and less people want to have stuff they don't want, and yet there's just so much stuff that is available to be purchased within within our money supply. Now, as far as money supply is concerned, you can look at supply and demand for that issue. As far as each individual everyday Joe, because the supply that the everyday Joe has is going lower and lower because we are having lower wages, because we are paying a heck of a lot more into interest and debt, we are paying more to these service fees, and so much more of this type of extra consumerism. This means that we have less money. So we have a lower supply. Now the demand for us wanting to have money does seem to be going higher only because we don't have the supply, and we still need to have money to buy your basic necessities, your shelter, your food, and so on. Now, as far as food is concerned and the food shortage, if there is a major significant decline in the amount of food that we have, then there will be inflation within food, and that goes within the supply and demand curve. When you have a supply that goes from here down to here, and the demand for people wanting to eat stays the same because it's a necessitary item or necessitary need to have food and water within our system, then that's going to cause massive problems. Of course, if there's only so much food available to feed a fraction of the humans within our planet, then that causes a lot of problems. And most likely what would happen is the elites, or the ones who have the majority of the money or more money, would be able to eat the food and drink the water. Now, the reason for the food shortage is, of course, because of the intense weather change that's going on right now, having the droughts and floodings at levels we have never even seen or have ever come comparable to before in the past, and the colony collapse disorder with the bees that are dying off. If the food supply goes way down and we have a small fraction of the food that we have today, then you can expect the food prices to go a lot higher. For example, if I have 1,000 units of one product and the supply is high, we'll say, that means that I have to have lower prices because it's going to take a long time to get rid of those products. Now, if I have a high price, not many people will buy it. The supply will stay high. In fact, like I was talking about companies going suicide by having higher prices, this would be an example of that. But if I only have a small amount of products, then if I have higher prices, I'm eventually going to sell out what I have. That is why inflation can hit us within the food trade, and it's only going to be within a food shortage that is going to cause the mass inflation. Thank you everybody for watching this video, and have yourself a magnificent day. Bye-bye.